Hello, my name is Damien, and I've been wanting to embark on this project for a while. I created this YouTube page, Indigo Purpose, because I wanted to add a little bit more reference material to Indigo adult and Indigo child characteristics, as well as post my own personal stories regarding those characteristics and some information as it comes along. I'll probably go into different topics in other videos, but since this is the first one I'm going to post, I basically just wanted to go through the characteristics that you can find online. There's plenty of websites out there. They all kind of say the same thing, and I'll just share my own personal stories and how those characteristics resonate with me personally. Most of the online material I found, it seems that it's always a person telling us how we are, or how you can tell if your child's an Indigo, or different tests and quizzes. But I would assume if you found this page, you're probably already thinking or questioning if you're Indigo or not. Indigo is normally associated with the color between blue and violet. Now, the natural color Indigo is actually a bluish green, dark bluish green, and that's actually the color of my aura. Now, about 6 or 7 years ago, while I was doing ocular training to develop my senses to be able to see the subtle differences in color to help with my own spiritual healing endeavors, after about a month, one night I was able to see my own, and I saw it to be dark bluish green. Now, this is long before I even heard the term Indigo or knew what it was about, and before I'd seen any of these characteristics. As I started looking into it, or I maybe even came across it accidentally, I found that I actually resonated with almost all of the characteristics that they've listed online. So I guess what I'll do is I'm actually just going to go through some of the ones that I've highlighted. I think there are some generalized ones, but overall they're pretty specific. It's pretty extraordinary that we can assume that most of us share these same characteristics. Now, the first one obviously is that we feel like we're on a mission. And me personally, for most of my life, I felt like I was here to do something specific. Now, in general, I think that Indigos have a specific purpose, and that is to kind of weed through all the information, whether it be truth or lies, and figure out our own truths, and basically pave the way for the children that are going to be coming up in the ages to come, and that'll be transforming and taking the leading roles on our planet. It's actually a really hard job, in my opinion, because I've met with a lot of scorn, I've met with a lot of resentment, and even hatred, because the propaganda side of it is that people believe that we feel that we're somehow more special or more important than anybody else on this planet. And I don't feel that's the case. I think it's easy to fall into that trap when you start, or even for some people, long into their spiritual path. But my own personal belief is that everyone is special, everyone is gifted. A person that plays a musical instrument and calls himself a musician or an artist doesn't mean that they're saying that they are holier than anybody else, or they're more important, or they're the best artist, or they have the only gift out there of music. Relating to the term Indigo just means that we have a specific job to do, and that we associate ourselves with the characteristics that people assume to be Indigo characteristics. I find that there's a lot of institutional laws and rigid belief structures that exist right now that are no longer serving humanity in general. And as we move into the new paradigm, I think that these are going to shift, and people are already waking up. It's very obvious. People are becoming more aware of their own self-evident truths, and I think this is going to get more and more prevalent as the time goes on. We're definitely in a new age, and the paradigm shift is happening. Whether it be, because of the, catalysts involving global crisis or global change, or just simply an evolutionary step, whether it be DNA or vibration, depends on how you look at it. I like to associate most of what's happening with vibration and energy exchange. I work with sound healing and sound in general and cymatics. That's kind of my gift, but more on the technology side, but I'll get into that later. Now, I don't necessarily consider myself psychic, or at least I haven't exercised that particular ability. I will say that I have a very strong intuition. I feel like I have a decent moral compass, and I base my moral flexibility not because of I'm God-fearing or that I'm fearing hell or anything like that after my life here on this planet right now, but just because it's self-evident. I feel like most people should know the difference between right and wrong. I'm not saying that there is an absolute right or an absolute wrong. More often than not, some of the hardest times in my life, the times where I've fallen or I've hurt somebody, or I've just acted like someone who is not me, I feel like those are the strongest life lessons, and we shouldn't look at those as say that they're bad, or wrap ourselves up in guilt and assume that those shouldn't happen to people that are on a spiritual path. Everyone's human. Everybody makes mistakes. It's important to make amends and take responsibility for your actions and use those learning tools so that you can progress. That's what a spiritual path is. It's learning life lessons through whatever means the universe brings you, and you have to be very careful about what you wish for. One thing I will say is that I can feel people's intentions. I can tell when someone's putting up walls or fronting, as some people would say. I can tell if they're hiding their own fears through anger or acting tough or the poor me kind of complex, and it's helped me have a little bit better compassion towards people in general. I definitely have a connection with all living things. I even have a connection with inanimate objects. When I was younger, I used to not want to throw toys away when they were broken, because I felt that they had feelings and that I didn't want them just to feel discarded and not used. So I would actually keep my broken toys because they still meant something to me and they served me well. So, now that I'm older, I have many inanimate objects that I don't necessarily associate myself with. Like, they don't add anything to me. Like, I don't drive a super nice car and I don't wear super nice clothes and try to make them be me or them to reveal me in a certain light. I choose the things that I possess to facilitate my life in whatever way seems to be most productive. We relate well with children and the elderly, and that we have a kinship with animals and nature. For me, that's especially true. I feel like animals are very receptive to me, and I am to them, and I have a really deep compassion for animals and their way of life. I don't have any pets because I don't feel like I have the time in my life to be able to devote to a pet, and it's not because I wouldn't love having one. It's just that I feel it wouldn't be fair to imprison them in a life that is, pretty much just waiting to sleep and eat and poop and go outside every once in a while. It's not to say that I think that everyone shouldn't have a pet, because animal companions are very important to some people, and I encourage people to develop friendships with animals as they see fit. As far as children and elderly go, I actually feel much respect to the people that have spent, a long time on this earth. They've seen so many transformations and so many changes in our way of life, and just seeing things develop, going from, less than 100 years ago. We didn't have any of the technological advancements that we do now. Life was completely different. Their hardships were completely different. Their knowledge base is completely different. Now we live in this information age, and we have everything at our fingertips. We know what somebody in China is doing, and we can even speak to anyone across the planet at any given time, and almost nothing is hidden anymore. And it's very interesting to think about that, because the more connected we've become, I feel the faster our evolution is exponentially increasing, or exponentially changing. As far as relating to nature, I've been blessed with the experiences of being able to work with different plant spirits, and had some visions and dreams that involved what I consider to be extra-dimensional entities, and I've been taught many things. And it's really hard for some people to believe that that can be real, that can be a real experience, even though it doesn't exist in our physical realm. But I know for myself that they are very real, and the wisdom and understanding that I've gained through these has definitely impacted my physical life, and therefore is as real as it can be. We're sometimes considered to be hypersensitive, and that is definitely the case for me. I feel very sensitive to people's energies, and very sensitive to social situations. I can walk into a room, and if it's one of those, walking into a saloon and the music stops and everyone turns their head, I feel very uncomfortable. I don't like being a center of attention. I don't like having a lot of eyes on me, and I feel like sometimes it is hard for me to discern between what somebody else is feeling and what I'm feeling because of, heightened levels of empathy. I do consider myself a cuddler. I'm very affectionate. I really enjoy being with a loved one, and sharing an embrace and having it mean something. I tend to be fairly reclusive, and I spend a lot of time by myself, which is another aspect of indigos in general, from what I can tell. I think some of my friends probably think that I am ignoring them, or I don't want to hang out with them, or this or that, but I find myself comforted in my own space and taking on my own projects, partially because it's hard for me to shift and do normal activities sometimes, because I feel like there's more to be done in a different way, in my own way, and I think that I'm okay with that. Living in the world right now, I know that society is broken in so many ways, with the corporatocracy kind of running everything, and making choices that affect the whole globe, and watching the toxicity of the planet rise, and higher CO2 emissions, and just the quality of life become, go, drink more coffee, get drunk on the weekends, just so we can go, cope and live our lives in a system where, we're doing work that isn't benefiting our soul, besides of the fact of, just getting to know people and forming friendships. And for the most part, a lot of people's jobs are mundane, and they don't actually serve any purpose themselves. I feel as an indigo, and being able to see truths and discern between false information and propaganda, and just looking at the systems in place right now and seeing how broken they really are. I mean, the corporatocracy is taking us in a direction that I liken to the image of a speeding train that is destined to crash. And there is no way that the system in which we live right now can sustain life indefinitely. So that means we're doing something wrong, because the whole point of human life is to evolve and grow, and we are the caretakers of this planet. We owe Mother Nature the respect that she deserves. I sometimes get labeled a conspiracy theorist, or that I'm soapboxing, or when I'm trying to share an idea that I found, or some new information about something amazing. I feel like sometimes people assume that I'm exalting myself, that I'm standing on a soapbox preaching the good word, but I'm just trying to share something beautiful that I found, and it is misunderstood for exaltation or self-importance, or hey, look, I found this. It's just, here's this. It's, look, this is this. It's amazing, and look at it. Regardless of who found it. I'm trying not to be discouraged with people having their own pace and their own way of accepting ideas, because we all have free will, and we all have the right and the ability to make our own choices and to grow as fast or as slow or as much or as little as we want, because we're always growing regardless of our conscious mind. Whether it be in art or meditation or work, we can be very good at what we do in any avenue, and that's all that really matters, is that we're enjoying our time, we're making our moments count. I noticed that a lot of the attributes have to do with school and educational systems, going into ADHD, and people with perhaps learning disabilities, or just lack of focus. And I'll say two things about that. Firstly, I'll say my own personal story. When I was younger, I remember in grade school, my parents put me into this, or sent me to like a counselor, and I didn't know why I was there. I just knew that he was going to give me pizza if I finished my homework on time, or I increased a grade from a B to an A or something. And it wasn't until years later that I found out that my parents thought I had a learning disability, and it just turned out that I didn't want to apply myself in areas that I didn't find interesting, but I excel in all of the areas that I do find interesting. So the second part I would say then is that our educational system is based on standardized testing and a standardized way of looking at things. And as we move into this new paradigm, children are going to need a new way to learn and a new environment in which to learn. There's plenty of places around the world that go about education differently, and I think here in Western society we are lacking in the way that we work on the development of our children and the way they learn. And so from my personal experience, looking back on that, I don't blame my parents. I don't blame them at all. It's hard to understand when a child goes from an A to a B, or their grades fall off, or they don't seem like they're interested in something, but it may come across as something different. Education has been kind of just crammed down our throats from the very beginning. You can't get a job unless you get a degree, or if you don't finish high school, then you're never going to amount to anything. And that's not the case, but that's just what's been programmed into our minds. Not saying that education shouldn't be sought, or there's plenty of experiences to be had in just going to school, socially, or learning about yourself in ways, just being around people, to be had, as well as, just gaining information and knowledge. So the next part I want to get into is the alienation factor. It's really hard for me to live in this world knowing or seeing the things that I do, because I know that the system is coming to an end as we know it. And to me, it's a good thing. Everything that our society is based on, sports teams and luxury and distractions on TV and news and just fear mongering and propaganda and corruption, and just being able to have a visionary mindset of perhaps not knowing the future, but believing in the future, having faith that things will turn around, even though we know the corporatocracy is holding so tightly on their idea of what the future should hold. And I have definitely felt despair and anger and resentment and frustration, and some days are very difficult and some days are just fine. I think people that feel this way, do tend to fall into patterns of anxiety or depression, getting into drugs and alcohol as a means to cope. And sometimes those can be, very powerful learning experiences. So to say that someone shouldn't walk down a certain path is to be seen. I feel like there's plenty of experiences that you can learn from, falling down and getting back up. But I guess it's important to remember, or at least let me say that I have faith in the future, and I have faith in what is to come. And from what I've gathered through my own dreams and visions and personal experiences, is there is definitely a conscious construct, and Source isn't judgmental. We aren't going to hell. We aren't going to heaven. Eternal bliss or eternal damnation make no sense in terms of evolution. That's my own personal experience. I'm not saying that I'm right. Another major attribute of indigos is that we have a gift of healing. And I've been practicing Reiki for maybe 7 years, and I did have an attunement a while back, and I don't necessarily feel you have to have an attunement to be able to do energy work, although I do benefit from my attunement. And learning healing techniques is a very powerful way to learn about yourself, and through practice you're able to see the difference in techniques and how they feel to you, and how responsive other people are to your techniques. We're supposedly extremely creative, and I do attempt to produce music, digital music, and I do work with sound healing. I wouldn't say I'm that musically inclined. However, I think a lot of creativity or art mastery has to do with just time spent, and I'm more of a jack of all trades. I have such a wide range of interests that I've never become excellent at any particular thing, but I I feel well-rounded in a lot of areas. And I've been around computers most of my life, and I'm pretty computer savvy, and I like tinkering with electronics, and I feel like I understand the physics behind mechanical things, and it's really fun to play with. So I definitely resonate with that characteristic as well. It's interesting to note how they talk about competitive sports versus personal sports, like kayaking or snowboarding or skateboarding or things like that, mountain climbing, going hiking. I I have played sports when I was younger, and I didn't really feel very inclined to continue on with that. I I like playing games, and I like to be active, but the competitiveness and looking at the way people value sports these days, it's really interesting to me. Um, I don't I don't think people should flip cars over and set them on fire if their sports team loses, when nobody on the team knows anything about them or could care less about them. And the people that have paid for those sports arenas are just making money off of you wanting to be there and purchasing team memorabilia and things. And it's just a really weird, wacky world that I definitely don't understand at all. Not saying that that's the way everyone should believe, or that's the way everybody should feel about that subject. That's just my own personal take on it. So lastly, I'll touch on the characteristic that some indigos seem to be born or live through traumatic events, or hard knocks. And I will say that I've seen a lot of horrible things, and I've had a lot of hard times in my life, or bad experiences, or supposedly bad experiences. And but I would also like to say that I feel very fortunate to have been born into the family that I was, and have the opportunities that were given to me growing up. Now, I was never a super popular kid. I did have friends, and I wasn't ridiculed as much as some people may in their life, and I didn't have any really tragic, unfortunate events growing up when I was a kid. But I have had traumatic things happen to me, and I've had tragic events, and I like to look at those as learning experience. It's very hard to do so in the moment, but some of those things keep you humble, and it's just really important to not give up, and to know that there are many people trying to make this world better. And if we can stay strong and believe in our own abilities and keep compassion for everyone, the people that are trying to ruin this world or take control of it, or keep it under their thumb, are living their own experience, and they may not even understand how horrible they are, or how horrible they're being. And in a way, they are instrumental in our evolution. If it weren't meant to be, then it wouldn't be. And that's important to remember.